New York has always been the city of dreams, a place where people believe that if you try hard enough, you can touch the sky. But now, that same city has become a stage for a strange confrontation between idealism and reality. On one side are those who believe fairness can be engineered through policy, that if we simply give enough, everyone will be happy. On the other side stands the hard truth of the market, where every number must balance and every free lunch still has someone footing the bill. Picture this, a young, passionate politician standing before a cheering crowd, promising free buses, frozen rents, and an easier life for the poor. Sounds beautiful, doesn't it? But then you glance at the price of gold, it's climbing every day. Why? Because when faith in money, in government, in the future begins to falter, people turn to gold as shelter. Just like when a storm is coming, instinct drives us to hold on to the safest thing we can find. I once heard an entertainment producer in New York say, "Politics is the world's biggest stage, and sometimes the kindest roles lead the audience straight into tragedy." That line reminded me of the 1,970 seconds, when buildings in the Bronx burned down because landlords couldn't afford maintenance under frozen rents. When idealism tries to triumph through emotion, it often loses to mathematics. I'm not saying idealism is wrong. It's what keeps us human. But if you don't understand how money and markets work, kindness can become a double-edged sword. And maybe that's what New York is teaching the world today. Before you try to save someone, you must first understand the price of goodness. When you look at the price of gold, you'll notice something fascinating. It's not just numbers flickering on a screen. It's a mirror reflecting human fear and faith. Every time the world feels unstable, gold shines brighter, as if warning us, we don't trust the system anymore. The first time I came to New York, the city felt alive, loud, dazzling, sleepless. But if you listen closely between the honking cars and subway noise, you'll hear another sound, the quiet anxiety of people trying to survive. Young workers juggling 3 jobs to pay rent. Middle-class families pushed out of the neighborhoods they grew up in. And when a politician appears, promising rent freezes and affordable housing, the crowd applauds not because they're naive, but because they're desperate. Yet the market doesn't run on compassion. It runs on incentive and trust. Take away a landlord's ability to earn, and you take away their reason to maintain, invest, or create new value. When enough people walk away, the city starts hollowing out not from a lack of kindness, but from a lack of logic. A friend once told me, "You can regulate prices, but you can't regulate human nature." When people are cornered, they find ways to survive, sometimes in ways society doesn't want to see. That's why hundreds of Bronx buildings once went up in flames. When the math no longer worked, people burned the equation. I'm not saying this to judge, but to remind you, even good intentions need a foundation of truth. If a city forgets that, it will eventually burn from within. Gold doesn't rise just because the economy is weak. It rises because trust is weak. And when trust collapses, not only money loses value, but so do dreams. Now imagine a summer night on the Brooklyn Bridge. The skyline glows, the water reflects 1,000 lights. New York looks strong, untouchable. But beneath that beauty are millions struggling under impossible costs: rent, insurance, taxes, uncertainty. People say the city never sleeps, but maybe it's because it can't afford to. Everyone is running from the fear of being left behind. And in that fear, even the noblest policies can sow the seeds of tragedy. What really destroys a city? Not earthquakes, not wars. It's when people stop believing their effort still matters. When a hard-working man realizes, no matter how long he works, he'll never afford his old apartment. That's when faith breaks. I once met a friend in Queens, a small landlord. After the city froze rent prices, he could barely afford to fix a leaky roof. "I don't hate my tenants," he said, "but I can't save the world while I'm drowning." It sounded selfish, but it was true. Every good act still needs an economic backbone. We can't legislate kindness. We can't pass laws to make everyone angels. People need motivation, that quiet belief that effort pays off. When a city crushes that motivation with taxes, regulations, and blind idealism, it dims the very fire that made it great. And maybe that's New York's tragedy today. A city so rich it can do anything, yet forgetting how to nurture the simplest faith of all, that doing the right thing is still worth it. I believe that within every tragedy a city faces, there's always a chance for rebirth. Today, New York feels like a veteran actor, exhausted on stage. The lights are still shining, the crowd is still applauding, but inside, the heart is weary from performing the same old role. But you know what? It's often at that very moment, when everything seems to be falling apart, that a new act can begin. Maybe you're not a politician or a business owner, but you're still part of this story. The way you work, spend, treat others, all of it shapes the city's future. I always tell my students in the creative field, you may not be able to change the whole world, but you can make your corner of it meaningful. And that's where real change begins. Imagine if every New Yorker stopped asking, "What will the government do for me?" and started asking, "What can I do to make this place better?" That energy would be unstoppable. Because the true strength of a city doesn't come from its budget, it comes from the spirit of its people. I saw that spirit during the COVID-19 pandemic. Street musicians singing for entire neighborhoods, chefs cooking hundreds of meals for hospital workers, strangers delivering masks door to door. When crisis hit, New Yorkers didn't wait, they acted. That's the DNA of this city, not falling from fear, but rising through courage. So if you're watching this, remember, collapse isn't the end. It's a reminder to return to what matters: people, responsibility, and faith. New York might stumble, but it can rise brighter than ever if each of us chooses to rekindle that flame. Because sometimes, a city doesn't need a new hero, it just needs its people to remember that they once were the heroes of their own lives. You see, the best thing about a city isn't its skyscrapers or its sleepless lights. It's its ability to reinvent itself after every fall. New York, despite all its contradictions, is living proof of that. It can be messy, lost, imperfect, but it never gives up. That's why I believe if any place on earth can rise again from its own ashes, it's this one. I remember during the financial crisis, thousands of small businesses went under. Yet from that wreckage came new ideas. A cafe in Brooklyn turned itself into a local job hub instead of closing. A group of unemployed artists took to the sidewalks, performing to raise money for children in need. When everything collapses, the true human spirit shows itself. What moves me most is that spirit, the refusal to wait for rescue, the choice to save oneself and then lift others up. It reminds me that a city's greatness isn't in its skyline, but in the hearts that keep beating with hope. So, if you're living in New York or anywhere facing crisis, know this: you are not powerless. Every small act, an idea, a kind word, a belief rekindled, shapes the world around you. Don't think you're too small to matter. Every great wave of change began with one person brave enough to believe that good still exists. New York may crumble physically, but if its people's spirit endures, it will always find a way back. And who knows, maybe you, reading these words right now, are part of that rebirth. Because sometimes, all it takes is a single spark to light up the entire sky. A director once told me, "A great movie isn't one without tragedy. It's one that turns tragedy into meaning." And I think that's true for New York and for life itself. Collapse, in the end, isn't failure. It's an invitation to begin again, wiser, deeper, more alive. Look at this city's journey from the Great Depression to 9/11 to the pandemic. The pattern is clear. Every time New York gets knocked down, it rises stronger, more creative, more human. Not because of miracles, but because its people choose to learn from pain. I remember a friend who used to be a waiter on the Lower East Side. When his restaurant shut down, he started filming simple cooking videos to help low-income families eat well. From a few hundred views, he built a community of millions. He didn't wait for the city to save him. He became part of its recovery. That's the real power of the human spirit, turning loss into inspiration. Have you ever felt like everything around you was falling apart? Your job, your relationships, your plans? If so, remember this: New York still stands. And if a city once burned, once broke, yet still found the strength to rise again, so can you. Because rebirth isn't measured in GDP or policy. It lives in the awakening of people who refuse to give up. So if someone tells you tomorrow, New York is collapsing, smile. Because sometimes, collapse isn't an ending. It's the first chapter of something new, written by those brave enough to dream again. And maybe, just maybe, you're the protagonist of that story.